Well, hello and welcome back. My name is Steve from Steve's Lovely Loaves, and this is another lesson in our How to Bake Sourdough Bread class. This lesson is about what to do to give yourself a backup starter batch if something goes wrong with the starter that you use on a day-to-day basis, or if you need to leave your starter unattended to for any length of time. I'm talking a couple of weeks to a month or indefinitely. Is there anything you can do to preserve your starter so that if you're away from your starter for an extended period of time, that you can actually revive it, or B, if something goes drastically wrong, you've got something to fall back on. I'm talking about if you get mold in your starter, which is rare, but it can happen, or if you unexpectedly use every skerrick of your starter up and you forgot to feed it and you've got nothing to go on with, have you got something to fall back on? Or, as I've heard sometimes happens, your partner might find your starter in the back of the fridge, have a smell and think, gee, don't know what this is, but I'm going to chuck it out, and they throw it out. It's happened. Or a number of other things that might affect your starter. What can you do to create a batch of starter to fall back on? Okay, so I'll go through a few different methods, and each of those has got varying amounts of time. Each one might be suited to a different scenario. So first of all, the first option is not to do anything. So you've got your starter and you've baked with it, you've fed it fairly fresh, and you, for whatever reason, you don't need it for a couple of weeks. Now for 2 weeks, it'll be fine. You just put it in a sealed container. This is a starter that I have that I fed just the other day. It's fed with rye, and rye has the advantage that if you have to leave your starter for any length of time, it'll tend to recover. It tends to last longer than, say, a plain white starter if you just leave it in the fridge. So if you seal that, I've got a lid back here. Seal that up and pop that in the back of the fridge. That would be fine for a couple of weeks, probably even 3 weeks. It might just require 1, maybe 2 feeds. It'll come back and it'll be quite fine. I've actually recovered a starter that was left in the back of my fridge for a year and still recovered it within 3 feeds over a period of about 5 days. And generally that will be fine. Your starter can be left go for quite a while before it's not usable. So that's one option. Just recovering it if you're away for a month, recovering it when you come back, give it a few feeds, discarding some, refeeding and so on, and it'll come back. The second option is to make a stiff starter. So if I was to, for instance, I want to make a backup batch. I might be baking regularly, but I want something that I can fall back on, that if something happens, I can grab, and within a couple of months of making it, it'll be fine. Well, I could take that same starter and I could just simply mix extra flour in with it, make it fairly stiff, and that will actually last even longer. So, you could go for a good couple of months, 2 months, even 3 months, and it'll spring back pretty quickly. Another way is to take that even a step further, and that is to take that starter and just cover it with flour. So it could be a centimetre of flour just on top of that, and that will then absorb extra moisture as it develops in your starter, and it'll keep your starter reasonably dry, and that'll preserve it and stop it from over fermenting too quickly. But I'm going to show you a way to actually take that to the not the extreme, but to actually do that type of thing in such a way that you can actually preserve it for a long, long time. 6 months, it'll still be okay. And that's this. I'll have to adjust the camera, so I'll come back and I'll talk you through it while I'm doing it. Okay, so what I've got here, I've got my starter in this bowl here, I've got some extra flour in this bowl here, and I've got a small container that I'm going to put it in. And this is just a method of preserving your starter by actually creating a dry environment for it to leach out excess moisture. So it's quite simple. You just take a decent spoonful of your starter, right? Put some flour on your fingers so it's not too sticky, and just drop it into the flour, just like that. Cover it in the flour and just roll it in the flour and make it into a ball. Just roll it around in your hands, and it will start out being fairly moist and soft, but you just keep going and get a fair bit of flour into that ball of dough. Just squeeze it in your hands until it starts to feel a bit sticky, and then pop it in there again. Do the same thing, and you'd keep doing this until the ball of starter that you've got is feeling fairly firm, reasonably firm. Okay, that's reasonably firm. It's not really hard, but it's firm. Okay, and then I might get another spoon out for this. Just get a decent couple of spoonfuls of starter in there, drop that in there. This is rye flour, by the way. I've made my starter with rye and I'm using rye flour. You can squash it down a little bit so you don't have to use too much to cover it. There it is. There's my starter, all surrounded with dry flour. And in that container there, give that a bit of a clean up, of course. But that will be good to go, and that can go in your fridge. It'll last for a good few months without needing to be touched. Or if you put it in your freezer, you can probably keep it in there indefinitely, probably for a year, and it would still be okay, because the amount of moisture in there is not too excessive, so you're not going to get things like freezer burn, and just in your fridge it's going to be very, very slow, because the less moisture there is, the slower the fermentation is going to be. So that's just one very simple but very effective way of having a backup amount of starter, or to preserve starter for an extended period of time. Okay, so here's another alternative. This way, this method is ideal for long-term storage. I mean, this can be kept for any length of time, even years, and it would still provide you with a good backup amount of starter. This is by simply drying it. And what this is just I've mixed my starter up as normal. In this case it's a wholemeal starter, and I've mixed it up so that it's a little bit thinner than normal. It's probably 1.5 water to 1 part by weight of flour, so it's a little bit more liquid. Then I've spread it out onto a sheet of non-stick parchment or Teflon or silicone paper or anything that's non-stick like that. Spread it out so it's very thin, and allow it to air dry. And probably there'd be about, I don't know, 75 grams worth of starter that I've dried. Once it's dried, it'll just peel off. You don't heat it in any way, just let it air dry at room temperature. Once it's dried, it'll flake off. It'll just peel off quite easily. It'll be very brittle, very, very crunchy, and just crunch it up just to the size that you see there. It's not particularly fine, although you can put it in a food processor if you want to and make it very fine, but you don't need to. And pop it in a Ziploc bag like I have, and then put that away either in a cupboard, or you can put it in the fridge, or you can put it in the freezer, or wherever, just somewhere where it's away from ultraviolet, and in a reasonably cool place. And leave it, and you can revive that even after a year or two or more. It just goes dormant. Those yeast and bacteria that are in there just go dormant, and you can then just revive it at any time. Okay, so here we're going to reconstitute the dried starter that I have. As you can see here, I've got it in my Ziploc bag as I had, and I'm going to add water to that. I'm going to put about 1.5 tablespoons of my starter in a glass container, small glass container. Then I'm going to add some water to that, about 1 centimetre of water, just enough to mix it fairly loosely to a fairly liquid kind of state. Just enough to make it into a slurry, fairly liquidy kind of slurry. So mixing that up. Put it to one side and let it wet out thoroughly. It'll take about 1 or 2 hours to do that. And then we add flour and water and wait for it to ferment for a day. And I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. Okay, so now we have our starter, which has been allowed to wet out for a good couple of hours. And now we're adding water to that, because remember it was very wet, so we're adding flour enough to make it into like a starter equivalent consistency. So about the thickness of a thick pancake batter. And then we're going to put that aside for a day and have a look at it then and see whether there's much activity happening. There probably won't be enough to use it there and then, but so we'll probably have to feed it again. Okay, so after adding the flour to that mixture, I put a rubber band around it to mark where the level was so that I could see in a day whether it had actually risen. And I put that aside and allowed that to ferment for a day. And when I came back the following day, this is how it looked. So I was actually quite pleased with that. It was a warm day, so that's what helped it to ferment and begin the process pretty quickly. It wasn't quite double, so I thought it was best to feed again, and I did. I haven't got a photo of the second attempt of feeding, but it came up pretty well, and after the second feed I felt I could have used it, but I thought I'd feed it once more for good measure. And after that third feed, it definitely came up a lot more active and bubbly and well over doubled the original level. And so yeah, I was very pleased, and I can verify that a dried starter will reconstitute within 2 to 3 feeds. In this case it was 3. I could have used it in 2. So it's a very, very viable way to keep a reserve amount of starter aside in case you have an emergency and you need it, or if you wanted to send it to somebody and they can then reconstitute it and use it themselves. So there you have it. That's the end of our starter series on how to make a starter, how to use a starter, and how to make a backup, and then how to reconstitute your backup starter. So I look forward to seeing you in the next video, where we will actually start to bake a loaf of bread, and I'll show you how to go through the steps of how to make a basic sourdough loaf. Look forward to seeing you then.